Hi, Hakan.
Hi, Elisabeth. We are here again.
I'd like to introduce our guest, Dr. Carlos Nevarez. He is Chair of Graduate and Professional Studies in Education in the College of Education at CSUS and Professor of the Doctorate in Educational Leadership at California State University, Sacramento. And recently, Dr. Nevarez served as the Executive Editor for the Journal of Transformative Leadership and Policy Studies, which well qualifies him as our guest for this discussion today. Welcome, Carlos.
I fully agree. And I also want to add, Carlos has been a longtime supporter of the annual CBA Film Festival as our jury member and a great old friend of mine. So it's great to have you here, Carlos. And we are focusing on today a very important type of organization in our Organizational Wisdom Studio episode, which is schools. And schools have their own dynamics, and yet they are organizations as an entity. And right now, we are talking about schools a lot because we are in an academic year where we will have to function at schools without buildings. And that's kind of counterintuitive because when we say school, people tend to associate schools with the buildings. So I think it makes sense to ask at this time then, let's go to the basics. If you take the building out of the picture, what is a school? So we'll be focusing on that, and also we'll be focusing on what school administrators can do to help schools stay in place even if you don't have the buildings. So can you help us walk through different elements of a school and how school principals can make a difference in each of these elements in the social isolation period?
Sure. So I would say there's four major purposes of schooling and what consists of a school. So the first I would say is developing the intellect, the cognitive abilities of the students that we serve. For example, in the subjects of math and reading, those are two major, I would say, gatekeeper type of subject matters that ultimately can serve students well if they master, I would say, or at least get the gist of those two subject matters. So one is developing the intellect of students. The second, I would say, is developing the civic engagement. I would say that's the second one in terms of a purpose of a school. So how to develop the political savviness of these students so they can contribute, to our communities, to our society, to our state, to our country in a civic manner. The third, I would say, it's economic purposes. For example, are they getting the skills, the disposition to be job ready? Are they getting particularly in elementary and middle schools and high schools, are they getting the foundational skill-based ability, knowledge to ascend into the workforce? So job preparation, for example. And I would say the fourth one is, and I would say this is, a lot of times this is not as well underscored as the others, but for social purposes, right? Developing the social and moral responsibility, the skill set to showing students how to act, how to behave, how do they develop human relationships, right? And I would say for me in leadership, the number one factor that makes individuals good leaders is their ability to develop relationships. Everything else can come, the conceptual, the skill set, but if you don't have that within you, then individuals are going to have a hard time, not only in terms of being successful as a leader, but being successful as a person. So those are the purposes of schooling. How do we get, to teaching them these four areas? Well, and I think in a previous conversation that I had with you, Hakan, you mentioned maintaining a hierarchy. I would say tear down the hierarchy. Right now, it's not time. It's no time to infuse a bureaucratic, an autocratic structured system of managing. Right?
So that doesn't mean a laissez-faire leadership. So it's democratic, which means bringing people together to make sense of something rather than you can do whatever you want, right? No. There's a fine boundary between the two.
I would just like to recognize that in our previous episodes, we've had CEOs, business leaders, we've had civic leadership and arts leadership in the community. And in each one of those domains, that was the very thing that they expressed. And that was really opening up and embracing their organizations at all levels is what was really helping them to survive this onslaught of challenges. Hakan, would you say that was the case?
At a time of crisis, you never know who might have the right answer. You never know which teacher or which student or which personnel might have this great idea that might actually help the others. So it's the school's administrators' role, I guess, to bring those voices together and help people to raise their voices. Is that right, Carlos?
No, of course, and also it's strategic on the part of the leader to involve others in the decision-making process. Why? Because ultimately, if people feel that you involve them in and you consider their thought process, their ideas, in terms of how to go about and make a decision, then they're going to actually buy into it and then support it and then play it out in practice. So it's even from a political strategic perspective, it makes more sense to involve them. Why? Because they're going to be supportive of that decision versus if you don't involve them and it was an autocratic decision that was top down, I say you do, then they're not going to resonate or a lot of times support that idea because they're going to feel that they were not involved in the decision-making process.
So Carlos, if it takes a village to raise a child, how can we reorganize this village in a way that the stakeholders in that village, being the parents, the teachers, the administrators, the government, come together to help each other out so that they can collectively help our children and teenagers who eventually matter?
You know, I would say, Hakan, that's an excellent question. I would say it takes a village to advance a high-achieving school culture. And I would say there's, and I'm just going to go through this fairly quickly, but there's a lot of research behind these 6 points that I'm going to bring up. I would say the first one, it's important for leaders to set a tone, a culture, a climate where students, families, and community members feel a sense of engagement, a sense that they matter, a sense of that the school is building community and they have an open door policy. So that's one. I would say the second one is share vision. It's important that leaders set the tone in terms of a vision, particular vision that is consistent in terms of what we're going through right now with all the challenges that COVID-19 has brought to us. So the shared vision where everybody is guided by this sense of these values and goals and everybody's striving to reach them as a team, as a community. That's the second one. I would say the third one is, and we haven't talked about this too much, but is a very important issue. Equity-minded. It's important that leaders become equity-minded and provide ample resources, particularly to those disadvantaged communities. For example, the issue of technology, the issue of internet access and so forth, just foundational resources that can make the whole difference in terms of advancing the well-being of students that are disadvantaged. I would say the fourth one is this shared vision. I talked about that quite a bit, is this sense that because I am the leader, it doesn't mean that I have all the answers, but encouraging others to participate in the decision-making process, because in doing so, you're going to be in a position where you found the best solution that you can actually implement, right? So collaboration in the decision-making process. And I would say the fifth one is, and I'm big on this one, is, man, challenge. Look at this not as a crisis, but as an opportunity. Be innovative, be resourceful. It's an opportunity to get rid of practices that weren't even working, pre-COVID-19. So look at it as an opportunity to change practices to better meet the needs of the students that we serve. So encourage them and give them the freedom, the space, and the support, and empower them to take on the sense of innovation, right? And I would say the sixth one is, once you set the tone, the resources, the provided professional development, the technology is there for the students, they have access and so forth, then high expectations. High expectations, and then you can hold the students and families and communities accountable. Are they, because you have set the foundation for rich learning, once again, we can go back to the evaluation and formal assessment practices. So I would say if you infuse those 6 practices, you are truly working to develop this village of success.
Carlos, I love these 6 suggestions, which I think brought us to such a optimistic tone. And traditionally, the episodes are about nothing but optimism, right, Elisabeth?
That's right, Hakan. Carlos, you've been so wonderful today to join us, and we'd like to have you back because this is dense and evolving. So thank you so much. Thank you so much, and thank you all for watching.
Thank you so much, Carlos.
Thank you, Elisabeth and Hakan, and congratulations to both of you on the leadership that you're taking on, to help our communities and schools and organizations. I appreciate it. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Bye-bye.